So a little bit of information about today's presenter, who is Puja Mitra. She's the founder director of Terra Conscious and is based in Goa. She's a conservation social entrepreneur with an MSc in biodiversity conservation and management from the University of Oxford and is a Commonwealth scholar. She is the recipient of the Sanctuary Nature Foundation Wildlife Service Award in 2018 and currently lives and works in Goa as founder director, as I said, of Terra Conscious, a conservation oriented social enterprise focusing on responsible travel and marine conservation outreach. In just 2 years since inception, Terra Conscious has been awarded runners-up in the category of Best Wildlife and Tourism Initiative by the prestigious TOF Tigers Award and features in media platforms such as BBC, National Nat Geo Traveler, Condé Nast Traveler, The Better India, Outlook Traveler, and others. I have personally known Puja for what, about 7 years now, I guess. I'm convinced she was not born, but she was actually launched into this world. And she hit the ground running. She lives in a world that has definitely much more than 24 hours a day, unlike us lesser mortals. And forever busy with various social and environmental issues, she is the essence of a power dynamo. If only we could harness that, all our environmental issues with power generation would be a thing of the past. Always brimming with ideas and information, she's a walking encyclopedia on conservation issues and someone I definitely look up to, but I'm unable to keep up with. We are planning on working together on marine conservation awareness programs in the near future, which I am really looking forward to. So Puja, take it away.
Thank you so much, Venkat, for that very generous introduction. And I must add that even my journey in Goa to even get into marine conservation has been because of Venkat. We met him. He's the first person we met when we moved to Goa almost 9 years ago. And it's because of him I started my journey with the World
I
Wildlife
didn't
Fund.
do it. I didn't do it.
But he's been really the flag bearer of raising awareness about these issues, and I'm happy to have gained so much from engaging with him over the years, and to have contributed in my own way. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to share some of the work that we've done. And thank you, Karen, for all the setting up support and getting us organized for today. Okay, so to begin, what I'd like to do is share my screen and take you through some of the work that we are doing. So I'm just going to do that now. Okay, is it?
Yeah, it's visible, but you just have to, yeah, that's it. Perfect.
Okay,
Perfect.
great. Okay, so Terra Conscious is something that I started 3 years ago, and before I came to it, I'd like to just cover sort of why I felt the need to set up a enterprise like this. And it really started with when I moved to Goa. I didn't know much about marine conservation because I grew up in Bangalore, and my exposure was largely to terrestrial issues. And when I got interested in wildlife at a young age, I was volunteering with elephant welfare. An NGO that works on elephant welfare. I worked in the northeast of India for a while on elephant conflict management. And I really thought that's really where I would be focusing, because one didn't know much about, the marine issues of India. And it was rarely covered even in our school or college. It wasn't something people commonly spoke of. And even, knowing our coast, largely for those that didn't live there, was more from a holiday perspective or visiting it once in a while. Goa was no different. We came here for holidays as children, as adults, but still never really knew what this state was all about and what its biodiversity was all about. And when I moved to Goa, I actually moved because I was running a national campaign for an organization called the Federation of Indian Animal Protection Organizations. And at that time in India, there was a proposal in 2012 to set up dolphin circuses across the country, including in Goa, in Delhi, in Chennai, in Surat, and in Bombay. And this sort of campaign that we started was because globally, with the films like Free Willy and Blackfish and the Cove, people had become very aware of marine mammals, their extraordinary emotional intelligence, their physical needs, their social needs, and they were beginning to question the keeping of these animals in captivity. And as the interest around captive dolphins changed in the Western world, these companies now were looking to invest in Asia. And India being a growing market at the time with rising disposable income, more and more people going out, engaging, wanting different tourism experiences, obviously somebody proposed that this would be a good idea. And in fact, India did have captive dolphins in the late 80s in a place called Dolphin City in Chennai, where they had imported 4 dolphins from Bulgaria and 2 seals. Needless to say, all died within 4 or 5 months of being brought here. Not only were the facilities completely inadequate, they weren't even suited to our climate, obviously not being tropical species. So basically, when I came to Goa with this campaign, I realized when I was running the campaign nationally that there was very little that was being spoken about in public discourse about marine mammals, about India's marine diversity, even though India is a 7,000 square kilometer long coastline and obviously is flanked by the Arabian Sea on the west and the Indian Ocean in the south and the Bay of Bengal in the east, and therefore has really rich diversity. There are some 23 species of marine mammals that we find in India. And yet people knew so little about it. So luckily this campaign was successful, and in 8 months we were able to become the 4th country in the world to ban the keeping of dolphins in captivity. And mind you, marine mammals like dolphins, whales and porpoises, collectively known as cetaceans, are already protected under the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. That means they have the same protection as the tiger or the elephant and are extremely important in their ecosystem, playing the same role as the others do in the terrestrial ecosystem. However, this protection is largely on paper because India has such a diverse, large coastlines, less number of protected areas, lot of human interaction with the marine space from livelihood perspective, fishing, tourism. And really people didn't know much about it. So while we became the 4th country to ban the keeping of them in captivity, we also became the first country to use in the legislation that was issued at the time by the Central Zoo Authority to say that cetaceans deserved the status of non-human persons in recognition of their their emotional intelligence and their cognitive abilities. And this was really a first to have that kind of language in legislation, at least coming out of the government, and acknowledging animal sentience and animal rights. So that really influenced me, and I learned a lot during this campaign from a lot of experts around the world and within the country. And I realized that there were a handful of ecologists who were studying this, but the public still remained largely unaware. And around this time, because we were in Goa, we went out to, we heard that there was dolphin watching, and we went out to see dolphins. And what I had learned was that the Arabian Sea was home to the Indian Ocean humpback dolphin, which is a coastal species of dolphin, and the finless porpoise, again, shares the same habitat as the humpback, and also with occasional sightings of the Broodies whale. There have also been sightings of killer whales, of humpback whales occasionally. So obviously it's, there's bottlenose out there, there's pantropical dolphin spinners. So there's a whole bunch of, variety of species of marine mammals using this space, but we were still, quite unaware of it. And in Goa, the dolphin watching industry was focused around the humpback dolphin because it is a coastal species. That means it has a very limited habitat. It generally cannot dive deeper than 20 meters depth of water, which means that it's commonly hunting around the river mouths, the estuaries, and so easily spotted. And that led to an organic rise of tourism about 10, 12 odd years ago, where fishers initially started taking tourists out to see dolphins. And that grew eventually into becoming a complete industry. And I'll get into, sort of why we wanted to go into this. But when I went out on a trip to see the wild dolphins, because I'd just come off the campaign and I was really like upset because, we had covered so much cruelty in the captivity industry, the trade, how dolphins are captured around the world and trafficked. And I really thought that, seeing them in the wild in my own country, in our own backyard, as it were, would be a great experience. And when I went out, and this is a point I always make, that I've been privileged to be educated, to travel at a young age. So I was able to see whale and dolphin watching in the US and in New Zealand. So I had something to compare it with. And when I actually went out, I found that there were a lot of gaps. There was no briefing to the customers. Nobody knew what was happening. We literally sat in the boat and we left. And in 45 minutes, I just saw boats chasing and surrounding two animals that were out that morning. And when we came back, for most of the people on the boat, their knowledge from the time they started to the time the trip ended was still zero. They hadn't learned anything, not even the name of the animal they had ostensibly gone out to see. So this really troubled me. And at that time, as I mentioned earlier with Venkat's reference, I was able to join the World Wildlife Fund India Goa office. And they, despite being in India for so many years, had just begun an oceans program. And that also shows how the focus in India for a long time has been terrestrial conservation. And oceans, haven't been given their due. But this conversation was beginning and they wanted to, work on a project in Goa. And I felt it would be great to look at the tourism impact. And Venkat had already shared with me the changes he had been observing in the coral reefs at Grand Island, where he goes diving with other dive schools as well. And we felt that a project like this would be great. It would give us some data, some actual evidence on which we could decide what kind of intervention would be helpful. So IUCN India, International Union for Conservation of Nature, at the time funded the study, and the focus of the study really was to look at what's happening with marine tourism activities. How is it is it creating an impact? Is it not? Is that negative? Is it negative? What kind of guidelines and strategies can we come up with to help the local communities who are dependent on these ecosystems and these species for their livelihood? And in what way can we enhance the knowledge of those that are actually experiencing it? Goa is a well-known destination globally. It gets a high tourist footfall, both domestic and international. And clearly dolphin trips were being marketed as dolphin trips, and people were going specifically to see this animal and yet coming away with very little knowledge about it. And here's a little graphic that I want to share with you. This is the hotspot in Padden. That's my dog Masala, who's equally outraged that these things are happening. So she's sharing her views. Anyway, so this point in Sinkerim, which is in North Goa, is where the largest boat operator association exists. So over the years, the boat operators started becoming organized into these kind of associations. And, this bay is about 3 kilometers wide, if I'm not wrong. And it's serviced by 4 jetties. So there's Coco Beach, there's Sinkerim and Kandulim Beach, there's Donapola Jetty and Miramar. And all of these actually send out different sizes of boats. So you have 50-seater boats that go out from Miramar, and you have, the smaller 10-seater boats that go out from these other jetties. And why this bay is so interesting is because it has 2 river mouths. It has the Nerul backwaters, it has the main Mandovi mouth, and that makes a really beautiful confluence of nutrients and, currents, making it a very good habitat for humpback dolphins to hunt. Also, it has a mangrove patch here, which, is a fish nursery, so it supports the distribution of prey. But because it's got these river mouths, it's also a thoroughfare. So trawlers go out from here, barges, private vessels, as well as the tow boats. Now, typically when a humpback enters this bay, it should just go in and hunt. But in the tourist season, which operates from October to May, the dolphin trips start around 8 in the morning and continue to about 5 in the evening. And when the animal is sighted, typically the boats will keep chasing it throughout the day. So although it is a protected Schedule 1 animal, it is not regulated the way, wildlife safaris are regulated in a protected area. So it's actually a pleasure boat cruise or a, sort of a tourist cruise, and the dolphin watching happens to be part of it. So there is no sort of break in the day when the animal gets any time off from tourist boats, sort of going around it. The other behavior that we noticed in the surveys was, if one boat saw it, you would get the others coming and everybody would surround it. And these are actually some points we took when we were doing the survey. So you can see how close they are getting, they're maintaining no distance. And I've actually observed almost 30, 40 boats around 1 or 2 individuals, sometimes a mother and calf. And calves, these dolphins, grow to the length of about 8 feet. They're about 280 kilos as an adult. They live in small family groups. They're very territorial. So, areas belong to certain family groups. And when their calves are born, they can't hold their breath for that long. The adults might manage 8-10 minutes, but calves need to come up every couple of minutes, 1 or 2 minutes. And if the boats are chasing and surrounding them in this manner, it causes a lot of stress and can also separate the calf and mother. Not to mention, engines don't go off, so it's a lot of sound, because sound travels really fast in water, 4 times as fast as on land. And all these boats are coming while other boats are leaving and heading out to open sea. So there's a lot of disturbance in this area. And during the coral surveys, these are pictures taken by the divers while they were surveying, and these are all freshly broken coral from anchoring, animals caught in discarded fishing nets, and pollution. It was a severe issue that we found at this area. So to address it at the time, we went through it from a typical approach, as nonprofits do have, which is to build capacity and, share the guidelines. There are international guidelines on how to watch dolphins. Basically, don't cut their path of travel, stay parallel, keep your engine off or in neutral, don't chase them. And we tried to sensitize at least 40 of the boat operators who agreed to participate in this program. We did a report. It was circulated with everybody, all the stakeholders. But when I went back to follow up after this study was done and we did this training, we were looking to see, whether people were actually following these guidelines, and they weren't. And I was really wondering, what is that barrier to conversion? What is stopping them from following it? They're saving petrol, they're getting a better sighting, the customer is happier. Why wouldn't they want to do it? And I really found that the major problem they were facing was actually finding a discerning customer, because they were reliant on these middlemen and the taxi guys or a hotel that would recommend a customer to go. So they had no access to the market directly. There was no input given into them to actually train them on how to conduct marine wildlife watching experiences. And there was no way for them to build a brand around their business. There were no caps on how many boats could be out there. There were no guidelines on, whether trips should happen twice a day or how many boats can be out at a time. So they were pretty much left without knowledge and input to come up with their own system of how to run this. So while they run in a queue system and they have a standard pricing, they also came up with this hook to get tourists to say that if you don't see a dolphin, you get your money back. Which of course led to more chasing. And then came also the fact that we are the lowest priced cetacean watching experience in the world. We're under $5. So, it's really nothing. It hardly, and fuel costs have risen over the years, labor costs have risen over the years, license fees are there. So it's not a lucrative business unless you're doing volume. And as we all know, mass tourism around wildlife and sensitive habitats like oceans ultimately has a very negative outcome. And in the study that we did, we saw dolphins were displaying signs of stress and avoidance behavior. 98% of the time, they were changing their path of travel around approaching boats. Now, these are big mammals. They have to burn a lot of energy to move in the water. They have to feed and forage throughout the day. They have to socialize, nurse their young, rest. They have their entire life cycle. And animals' lives unfold slowly. They don't, very little happens on the surface for a marine mammal. Everything's happening within the water. It's only coming up to breathe every couple of minutes. The rest of it is all happening in the water. And the boats just weren't safe around them. And not because of any willful sort of disobedience, but just because there wasn't enough input. So I decided to leave WWF and start my own social enterprise for 2 reasons. One, because I believe that the major gap of connecting the conscious consumer with the trained operator is something where we could support. And two, I felt it wasn't fair for me to go and project a model or suggest a change unless I could prove that that model could work and there was an income to be earned. Because ultimately people who are involved in this are largely from an underprivileged background. This is their bread and butter, it's their livelihood. So if you're not sure that these changes are going to work, then you shouldn't suggest them till you can actually have evidence to back your idea. So we started the Safer Seas program, and under that we started 2 programs simultaneously because we also wanted to know what was happening to the marine animals on our coast. We knew there were sporadic strandings being reported, and we wanted to know and monitor that. So actually the journey started, I was introduced by actually Vayu, which is a surf school in North Goa, also sustainable, ethical. You should go check them out. They introduced me to these boat drivers from Morjim. and there were 3 boats over there, and they actually, here they are. And I went to meet them, and I took them out on a day. I mean, they were taking a set of customers out, and I offered to go along. And Vayu also had a school group visiting at the time, and we said, okay, let's go and do this trip. So we went out, and I requested them, I said, can we follow these 4 simple steps, switch off our boat and stay parallel? And they said, yeah, that's fine. Let's do that. And we went out, and we had a wonderful sighting. It's such a beautiful part of Goa. We saw a mother and calf, and we observed them for a very long time. And when we came back, they were really happy with that experience. They said they felt good being out, the boat operator themselves. And they felt that they would like to know more. And that's when I went and just joined them on the beach and shared some facts. Simultaneously, we approached the Drishti Marine, which is the lifeguard agency. And Goa is lucky that way. Being a tourism destination, it has a lifeguard agency. So that means it has 38 beaches manned all day long by 600 lifeguards. And they are an eyes and ears network. And we weren't using that effectively. We weren't really getting the information about our marine life that we could. And many of them are very interested in the marine life because they are working in that ecosystem all the time. And saving lives in it nonetheless, no less. So we met them and the forest department, and we got a lot of support from the Goa State Forest Department and from IUCN India again. And we ran a program to train the boatmen and train the lifeguards, and began, looking at these issues. So the main outcomes that we faced, that we achieved through this program in the last 3 years that we've run it, is that we've managed to get almost 10 operators to become our partners. And our aim was to educate our guests about marine life. So one thing we did was change the trip from a 45-minute trip, which it is currently for the other operators, because that is sold as part of a 1-day package to visit Goa. So now, even if you train a boat operator in ethical guidelines, he has no choice but to bring the customer back in 45 minutes so the customer can get onto the bus and go to the next activity. So it became very important to advocate and say that wildlife watching shouldn't be part of these package deals, so that it can be done patiently and with some time, so that so they don't have to rush and finish it. And also we introduced the internationally accepted guidelines, and we encourage them to follow it by doing the trips in support with them, and also to provide the market link. So we help them to find the right conscious consumer who is willing to pay a premium for this experience and support them. Similarly, we did these training workshops. They learned how to handle sea turtles, how to handle dolphins, what to do if it's deceased, what to do if it's alive, who to report. And at this point, it's important to note that Schedule 1 animals can only be handled by the forest department or by someone that they authorize. So if you do come across a stranded animal, please don't try to handle it yourself. Always report it to a lifeguard or call the local forest department and try to assist them, but do not try to deal with it yourself. A lot of people are not aware of this or what to do, so you do get people trying to rescue out of goodwill, but sometimes you can cause more damage if the right training is not there. In the 3 years that we've run this program, you can actually see that, we always thought that, sea turtles come to nest in Morjim and Galjibag. Dolphin watching happens opportunistically across the coast. So it happens in Sinkerim, Kandulim, a little bit in the north and a little bit in the south. And we kind of thought that's what the distribution must be like. But as we started reporting the standings more regularly, we got reports from across the coastline, every single beach, with really high incidence of reporting in the south, especially near, we don't know exactly why, but it's really near a big fishing jetty and lots of tourist presence here. And we started getting a lot of high frequency of calves as well. Now, because Goa lacks a marine wildlife treatment clinic, it lacks proper marine veterinarians, we don't really have good necropsies conducted post-mortem, so we don't really know why each of these animals might have died. But that is something we're working towards, and this at least is giving us a good idea of how frequent it is and what kind of capacity. So we're averaging about 100 animals a year right now. This number's already crossed this year. 339's already gone up to about 370. And we've been getting multiple species. So we earlier thought only the olive ridley sea turtle, for example, but we got hawksbill, we got green turtle, and even in dolphins, I thought we largely get humpback or finless. We do, but we also got Broodies whale, we got a sperm whale, once alive, once dead. We got a spinner dolphin. We got a pantropical dolphin. So, it's been quite an interesting set of information that's been coming out, and we're trying to strengthen this network. We have a very simple format. It's a WhatsApp group. The lifeguard patrolling sees something, he lets his supervisor know, who lets us know, and we let the forest department know, and then we maintain the database. And every year, Technology for Wildlife, who is our collaborator in this project, produces these wonderful maps. So it really gives people an idea of how spread out the issue is. Now, why is this important? Because this gives us the evidence to advocate for responsible tourism, and to say that the problem is not just centered in a Sinkeri or in a Kalangut or something. It is across the coast, and it will continuously be so if tourism isn't regulated and we don't look at the coastline as a whole picture, and we just kind of look at regulating this or that. So you can ban water sports in Morjin, but if you keep it going all here without proper training and proper regulation, you will end up having problems everywhere. And I don't advocate banning in any case, because I feel it doesn't really change anything. It just pits the person against the animal. And if you look at Asia, people are very much part of the landscape and the seascape. They have been shaping these spaces for centuries, and they have very close relationships, sociocultural relationships with these landscapes and seascapes. So making them part of conservation can only happen if you don't separate them from it or villainize them, but understand what's driving these challenges and address that. So that's really the model which we work on, which is community based. And what we are trying to do is green skilling, which is training them. So this year, we're also partnering with the World Cetacean Alliance to create a cooperative of the boat operators and certify them and train them and help them access a larger market, to brand themselves, and to really be valued and recognized for being ethical operators. And we hope that will also incentivize others to join. And just before the pandemic, Sinkeri Jetty, which has taken me 9 years to actually build a relationship with them, the Operator Association actually approached me saying they'd like us to train everybody on it. And I think that's wonderful that it's coming from the community itself. And this is something we're very excited about, and we'll be running a crowdfund soon for it, which is to set up a marine wildlife clinic, because we are getting enough injured sea turtles every year to need a facility like this. And most importantly, we need guidelines for responsible marine tourism, because there's so many different kinds that happen in Goa. There's high-speed water sports, there's diving, there's kayaking, there's sailing, there's marine wildlife watching, crocodile, dolphins, the beach, of course, where the turtles come to nest. But we don't have a marine tourism policy specifically, and we don't have specific training for a conservation oriented travel experience. And these are things which can be done if everybody works together. So that's something we want to facilitate, those conversations and those consultations. And also we want to look at ideas around how coastal development can become more eco-friendly. And to that end, we collaborated with an architect group in Goa called Play Group, which is a wonderful, innovative architect group. They pro bono designed this model clinic, or what it can look like. It's coastal zone regulation compliant, as meaning it's not permanently fixed on, it's not cement, it's upcycled containers. And it can also serve as a small interpretation center for visiting tourists on the beach to learn something about the marine life. And at the back, we've designed it. Right now, the current shack on Morjim, which is the department shack where rescue for injured turtles go, is just, it's very temporary and it doesn't have a proper demarcated spaces. But we've created spaces for tanks, for veterinary examination, for quarters, for the staff. And it's built to scale on the 1,000 square meters. I think that presently they have space over there. And we feel that this could become a good model. It's not as expensive. It's easy to remove if needed. And it prevents waste, because you're upcycling containers that would otherwise be junked and cause more pollution. And why our focus is so much on tourism? Of course, in Goa, it's a livelihood. But if you look at some of the vision documents for India from the Niti Aayog and the Blue Economy Vision, marine tourism is being pushed everywhere, whether it's on the mainland or in the islands. But in the absence of a overall approach where you're looking at how, from a socio-ecological lens, we're looking at how people are impacted, how animals are impacted, how the ecosystem is impacted, and what are the gaps that prevent people from actually following ethical practices. And lack of awareness is only the beginning. Price point, marketing, government support, all of this matters, and it all has to happen. Otherwise, it's only easier for the privileged to become responsible and for the privileged to switch their practices because they have access. And that's not so easy for everybody else. I mean, a lot of the boat drivers in Goa are migrant now. They're not even locals, and they come from terrestrial backgrounds. They could be farmers. They could have been driving a truck one season and driving a boat the other. And to expect that person to just get like a week's long training on how to run a boat or a jet ski, but to expect that person to have a connection with the marine ecosystem and to understand it, it's a reach unless they get all that input and support that so many of us have had. I'm very aware of the fact that if I'm even able to have this career, it's because of all the input and privilege I've had my entire life, whether it's education or how I was brought up, what I was exposed to, the fact that I could travel. So many are denied that because of the inequalities in our system. And one workshop or one training program is not going to change that. It has to be a systemic change, which continuously gives people opportunity to learn, to see, to practice, to see the results. And really, when we finished doing this program and began our and our model started getting stronger, I asked the boatmen what their key takeaway was from this program, why they thought it was beneficial. And I thought they'd say it was the higher income because we were priced higher, we were a longer trip, there were, you know, higher quality, higher paying customers coming, so they were earning better. But they didn't say that. They said it was the dignity and respect accorded to them by our customers, by our guests, making them feel proud of what they did, making them feel that they were contributing to conservation. And over the years, the lifeguards have now started reporting seabirds, they've been rescuing sea snakes, other animals, and they're so keen, they want to start their own marine wildlife group, they want to go out and sensitize in the villages. So these are all things we want to do, taking these programs forward. So that's a little bit that we've tried to do to show how nature and tourism can coexist, how responsible livelihoods can be developed, and how it takes a village to make that happen. So thank you, and I'll take questions if there are any.
Thank you, Pooja. That was awesome. Very, very informative. And I love this design. It's absolutely wonderful. It's
Thanks.
by the way, before you get into questions, I don't see any questions in the box, but let's give people a few minutes to dream up of some.
Okay.
What is the cost? Have you costed this as to how much it's going to cost?
Yeah, it's going to cost about 30 lakhs to build.
Mm-hmm.
That's everything, including the furbishment and the tanks for the seawater and all of that.
Mm.
And probably we'll need a little bit of budget for project coordination and stuff. But yeah, around 30 lakhs is what it's going to be costed at. And it's something that can be easily, you know, done across the state. You don't even have to do it just in one location. And we've also talked about how we can use one of the containers, even put it on a sort of a, you know, like a truck kind of a thing, and take it to villages as a mobile marine school
Mm.
to educate kids and show them films and things. So it can be a multi-purpose thing. In the monsoon, you know, one of them can be moved. And because it's got this geometrical like assemblage, it can be changed around as you need. So it can be adapted to the requirements of the clinic. In fact, what I didn't show in the photo, but I can show you here, they've actually made space here to do whale and dolphin necropsies. Because what happens is when you get an animal on the beach and you want to do the post-mortem, a lot of times shacks complain, and it's a disease risk also, you know, because you're cutting open the animal and all of that. So we thought this would be good because you could bring it to the clinic. You may not be able to do it inside, but you can do it outside safely. And in the wake of the pandemic, it's become even more critical for people to be aware that if stranding is not handled properly, it can add another additional risk to the people on the beach.
Mm. You got to be careful though. This looks like a nice little setup for a bed and breakfast place. Yes.
Well, you'll have to share it with some turtles and they won't like it. But yeah, I mean, I think even the guards, like they're so committed, you know, if you go to Morjem and you meet the forest guards, the lifeguards, I've only, like, they've just been amazing examples. Like in the monsoon, we had entire sections of the beach caving off because of so much erosion. And there was a nest where the eggs kind of, you know, started rolling down.
Oh no.
And the lifeguards actually climbed down and picked up each egg and brought it back up and, you know, saved as many as they could. So they are really, really committed. We had a live dolphin in Miramar, you know, lifeguards stayed with it the whole day, took it out on the trawler, released it, you know, they're so invested. And this is only increasing. Like now we get citizens reporting, because even across Goa, there are parts which are like rocky, which are not manned by lifeguards. There are 12 points like that. And now I get reports from fishers, from students, from citizens. So it's really great because people now feel there is a network. I can get some help. I can do the right thing. And it's giving us a really good picture of what is happening on the coast throughout the year.
I think that was fairly groundbreaking work that you put in there, because nobody had ever done this study. There was no baseline, there was nothing at all. And this was fantastic, even though it's a bit depressing when I see all the reports coming in. I really feel upset, but then that's part of life. At least we know so many
Yeah,
are coming. And then the next step would, of course, be to possibly pinpoint
yeah,
what is the cause. And then, of course, the final step would be to do something about it. I think you put the seed in the right places, because I was speaking to the PCCF a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him pointedly on our webinar that what's happening. You had mentioned about the marine rescue or marine cell, which was going to be a part of the forestry
yeah,
department, and he said they're working on it, but there required a few modalities to work out.
yeah,
But it is in the pipeline, which is good news.
yeah.
I know it takes its own time, but at least it will,
And
eventually
quite
come.
interestingly, the CAG of India has just completed an audit of state performance for sea turtle conservation across India. And I think it's being done for the first time, which is great because they're actually pushing states to account for what they're doing for marine conservation and such
Mhm.
community based. What is great about this network? It's largely voluntary because only Drishti is employed by the state, and that too only to monitor human lives.
Correct.
Whatever we do for marine wildlife is because the company wishes to do so and the lifeguards are willing to put in that time. We, of course, voluntarily coordinate it. And really, the kind of information, like they've been reporting seabirds, and it's crazy. We get so much of masked boobies. We've been getting, different kinds of seabirds. There's so many, because now we know, and technology for wildlife has even done frequency assessment for us. And every year we are seeing the same months when you're seeing a spike in the number of cases. So that also helps the state prepare. So we know that those months you need extra manpower on the beach, or you need a dedicated vehicle because you're going to get more. So it makes the state, use its resources better when you have this kind of, constant monitoring. And I think we are the first structured public-private network in India like this. I mean, there are informal networks across the country, but more and more it's getting strengthened. So yeah, I think this is a great way for even citizens to contribute, because citizen science is such a big part. And even what you do on the diving trips, when people are learning about ecology, and as you mentioned earlier, SSI is promoting these different ecology courses. And if they link in with field projects and people can actually come, learn to dive, go out, contribute to such programs, participate, get the training, it will make such a difference over time because you'll have a much widespread engaged society.
Yeah, yeah, I think education is definitely the way to go.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a couple of questions for you. Valanka Diaz is asking, how is Terra Conscious funded?
So we are a business, we're not an NGO. So when we do projects like this, we get paid a consultancy fee to do the training or to coordinate the project. And we run 4 travel activities. We have a dolphin watching experience that we do with the boat operator partners. We offer kayaking, cycling, and we partner with dive schools. In fact, we also collaborate with Venkat and other dive schools to offer diving. And what we earn from that then supports us to do the work that we do in this. We also offer a lot of school trips. So we get groups of schools coming out with us. We do these week-long itineraries, which have different activities and workshops. So that's like our revenue model. That's how we earn.
Good. Okay, Sanjay, who is also an instructor, is asking a question. If I come across a live animal that is stranded, I should not handle it. Who should I call first? Drishti Marine guys may not be around.
Well, that's a great question, but they are around because all 38 beaches are manned. So you will need to perhaps call a friend or, walk to the tower. They are patrolling in sequence. So they have rounds that they do every hour. So there will be a patrolling lifeguard. And if you don't see one, you can call us because our numbers are available online. And the second number that you can call is the forest department. If you go to their website, and I can share it later with Venkat, he can also share it around. They have a 24/7 helpline. So you can call any of these and report the animal. And the best thing you can do is watch over the animal, even if it's dead or alive, to make sure that people are not disturbing it, or stray dogs or birds are not disturbing it. And keep a watch on it till somebody arrives to assist you, which in this case will be the lifeguard or the forest guard or one of our volunteers.
Lovely. I would request Pooja that if you have the number handy on your phone right now, you can actually put it in the chat box, because
Yeah.
people can save it on their phone, and that I think is a great thing to have.
Okay, I will then stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, you can lose that. Yes.
So you can report it to us directly at this number, or you can go up to the lifeguard tower and report it. And I'll just give you the forest department number as well. And in every state, there will be a forest department number that will be available. And they all have 24/7 helplines for wildlife rescue. And since these are all Schedule 1 animals, they all come under the forest department. So you aren't allowed to handle them even if you wish to. So because that can be a criminal offense. So you have to be careful and make sure that you are only touching it if there is a forest department present, and you also should be trained in what to do when you see it. So those are the numbers for North Goa and South Goa. So depending on where you are, you can call them. And they are manned, so somebody will answer.
Excellent. I'll just give people a few minutes to copy that down. But the most important number there, guys, just so you know, is the first one, which is Pooja's number.
Yeah. And we actually monitor it 24/7. So whenever you find something, please report it immediately, even if it's a nesting turtle, because even that we record.
That's right. Cool. Okay, I think we have run out of questions. And if anybody else has got anything, please, now's the time, because we want to keep Pooja from her schedule. It's already 8:22. And thanks, Pooja. Thanks for being here. Thanks for making time and educating all the people about all the wonderful things which are actually happening in Goa. I think all of us get into a rut and we keep complaining and moaning about things, but it's always nice to know about good things which are happening, and they are happening. That is the reason why I started this platform, because there are so many wonderful conservation efforts happening all over the country. And unfortunately, we don't hear about them unless you are actually in the field.
True.
So that was the reason I started this. And it's amazing. The response has been very good. And people have been so sharing. So it's wonderful. Right. Thank you so much. All the best to you and Roshan for the season. And I'm really looking forward to something we can do together.
Yeah, absolutely.
For conservation.
So thank you, Venkat and Karen and SSI for this opportunity. And really, I think, everybody, when you go to the beach next, do remember to give a shout out to the lifeguards and to the boat operators, because they are trying and they are participating and making a lot of difference. And, when people acknowledge them, that goes a long way.
It does, indeed. All right, folks, thank you for all those who were participating and who stayed the course. Wake up, it's time to leave now. Okay, go and have your dinner.
Okay.
All right. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.